The dust was thick that day, hanging in the air like old grief. Noon burned over the town of Dry Creek, casting long, shimmering shadows across the auction square. People gathered, drawn by heat, boredom, and cruelty dressed as curiosity. They whispered behind gloved hands, spat tobacco into the dirt, and squinted at the figure standing on the wooden platform, thin as a ghost, barefoot and silent. The girl didn't blink. Not when the auctioneer shouted, not when a man laughed and said she looked like something out of a fever dream. Her hands stayed at her sides, dirty fingers twitching now and then. The braid over her shoulder was undone in parts, strands of sun-bleached hair sticking to her cheek like straw. But it was her arm that caught Elias Boone's eye. He hadn't meant to stop. He'd ridden in for salt and canvas, had kept his hat low and voice lower, hoping to be gone before anyone noticed the man who spoke less than he drank. But when he saw her, when he saw that tattoo curling up her forearm like smoke from a mesquite fire, he couldn't move. A feather, not just drawn, but inked with care, coiled and sharp-edged, like it had been placed there by a hand that believed in more than ink. And Elias had seen it before. Once. Years ago. In another canyon. Another life. He took one step closer. The girl didn't look at him. She wasn't looking at anything, really, just staring past the horizon like she'd already left her body behind. She looked young. Maybe 19. Hard to tell with how the desert sun had carved into her skin and the way she stood, still, quiet, as if she belonged to the wind. The auctioneer's voice barked out across the crowd. Wanderer, caught near Rattlesnake Pass. Claims no kin. No papers. No tongue, far as I can tell. We'll start at $1. No one moved. A dry chuckle broke from someone in the back. She's cursed, someone muttered. Look at that mark. That's savage ink. She's not right, came another voice. Heard she don't sleep indoors. Sleeps in the hills. Eats roots. Elias's throat tightened. The wind stirred. His heart knocked once, slow and low, like the echo of a drum in the canyon where he almost died. He remembered lying on stone, bleeding from a gunshot, fever-racked and waiting to die. Someone had come to him then. A woman. Brown eyes, soft hands, humming some tune he couldn't forget even now. She'd crushed herbs, sung over him. When he woke, the wound had closed. The woman was gone. But he remembered the tattoo. That same feather. That same curve. Maybe this girl wasn't her. But maybe she was kin. Come on now, the auctioneer said, slapping dust off his vest. $1 for a pair of hands. Could wash clothes, maybe. Feed chickens. A boy laughed. She'd curse your well. Another man spit. She don't talk. What's the use? Elias stepped forward. Just one step, but in a town like Dry Creek, a quiet step from a quiet man was louder than gunfire. I'll take her, he said, voice dry as bone. Stop the bidding. The auctioneer froze. Sir. Elias pulled a silver coin from his pocket. Walked up. Dropped it into the dirt at the man's boot. The girl didn't flinch. But slowly, she looked at him. Her eyes met his, deep, dark, unreadable eyes. And something in them flickered. Not surprise. Not fear. Something older. Recognition, maybe. He reached for her hand, careful and slow, like coaxing a wild bird. She let him. Her fingers were rough and small, but they didn't tremble. No one spoke. Just the wind moving like breath between buildings. He led her down from the platform, through the staring townsfolk, past the preacher's squint, past the mayor's pinched disapproval, past the boys who stared at her like she was a story they'd heard in whispers but never believed. No one stopped him. No one said a word. The girl followed without resistance, steps quiet against the dry ground. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't speak at all. Elias helped her onto the horse, and she held to the saddle horn like she'd done it before. They rode out of town slow, silent. Only the hoofbeats filled the air, and even those were soft, muffled by dust and distance. The sun dropped behind the hills as they turned onto the trail that led to Elias's homestead, tucked in a canyon, where sycamores leaned like old men and a spring ran cool under stone. He'd built it himself after the war, after the fever, after the silence swallowed him whole. He hadn't brought anyone there in 12 years. At the cabin, he dismounted, tied the horse, and helped her down. She looked around, not like someone seeing a new place, but like someone remembering an old one. Her hand brushed the stone wall gently. She stepped inside without hesitation. Elias lit a lantern. The room filled with soft gold. She moved to the hearth, knelt beside it, and began to arrange wood with the calm of someone who knew how to speak to fire. He watched her. In the lamplight, her tattoo gleamed faintly. She'd covered much of herself with dust, but the mark was clean, as if the ink itself refused to fade. He cleared his throat. "You were there," he said softly. "You or someone like you. Years ago. I was half dead. Shot near a canyon riverbed. Someone saved me. Someone with a feather on their skin." She didn't answer. Just glanced at him, eyes reflecting firelight. He laid a blanket near the fire. Pointed. "You can sleep there tonight. I'll take the cot." She nodded once, deep and slow, then sat cross-legged, hands in her lap. He turned away, heart too loud. What had he just done? Who was this girl, really? But something inside him was quiet for the first time in years. Not peaceful, exactly, just still. As he lay on the cot in the corner, he watched her. She stared into the fire, humming low. A tune he remembered. From the canyon. From the dream. He closed his eyes and let the memory take him. He didn't know what would happen tomorrow. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But she was here. And somehow that mattered more than he could explain. Mornings came quietly after that, as if the land itself was holding its breath. She rose with the sun, her bare feet padding over wooden floors, tending to the horses before Elias even stirred from bed. She moved with a purpose too old for her young frame, gathering eggs, stirring oats, boiling water, yet she never made a sound unless it was the soft hum of that melody, the one that haunted Elias like a distant dream. She spoke with her hands, her eyes, her stillness. In every silence, Elias heard something louder than words. He tried to speak sometimes, to fill the space between them with meaning. Told her about the day his mother died on a wagon headed west. How he buried her with his own 2 hands beneath a cottonwood tree near the Pecos. About the scar on his chest, the bullet that nearly ended him, and the humming voice that brought him back. She never interrupted. Just listened like the land listens to the wind, endlessly, without judgment. One morning, while she gathered wild mint near the spring, Elias followed. She crouched low by the water, her reflection rippling beside the green leaves. He sat on a flat stone nearby and pointed gently to the mark on her forearm. "That tattoo," he said. "Did someone give it to you? Or did you choose it?" She looked up at him slowly. The light caught her eyes. They weren't just dark, they were layered, like canyon walls. She rolled up her sleeve, pressing her fingers to the inked feather, then raised her hand to her chest, laying it over the place where his scar was. Elias's breath caught. "You were there," he whispered. "You found me." Her hand didn't move. Her gaze didn't waver. But something shifted in her, an invisible knot loosening, a guarded weight easing off her shoulders. She nodded, just once, then stood and walked back toward the cabin. And for the first time since he'd known her, Elias felt the warm pull of a bond that didn't come from blood or obligation. It was something older. A tether formed in fire and chance, stretched across years and distance, and now gently tying them both to this moment. By week's end, gossip rode faster than the wind. A ranch hand brought news. The town was stirring. Whispers said Elias Boone had taken in a girl marked by witchcraft. Some claimed she was a spirit in human skin, others said she was dangerous. The preacher had spoken in the square, invoking judgment. The marshal was asking questions. Elias leaned against the doorframe as the news settled in his chest like cold iron. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed, not afraid but watchful. "They'll come," he said. "With questions, maybe more." She stepped forward, placed her hand on his arm. It was the first time she touched him without being led, and he felt it like a prayer. She didn't look worried. Just certain. That night, thunder rumbled low across the hills, crawling through the sky like some slow-moving beast. Rain refused to fall, but lightning cracked against the horizon. Elias couldn't sleep. When he went outside to check the barn, he smelled smoke. A pine tree near the paddock had caught fire, one dry spark, one bad wind. Flames licked up toward the night. Elias grabbed a burlap sack, shouting to no one. But she came running. Without words, they fought the fire together. Smoke stung their eyes. The heat burned their lungs. She didn't panic, didn't cry. She moved like someone born of flame, calm and deliberate, fetching water, smothering sparks. When the fire finally died, the paddock still stood. The horses were safe, and Elias sat on the ground, coughing, staring at her through the haze. She knelt beside him, soaked in sweat and ash. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, in a voice so soft he thought it might be the wind, she spoke. "I was 10 when I found you." He turned to her, heart thudding. "My aunt had the feather," she continued. "She was medicine. She said if I inked it, I could carry life between worlds. I didn't believe her, not until I pulled you from that canyon." Elias stared at her, words lost in his throat. "I didn't know if you'd live," she whispered. "But I wanted to remember that I tried. That I could do something good." He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. In that moment, the air between them filled with something holy, not forgiveness, not salvation, just simple, mutual knowing. The next morning, 2 riders came. One wore the badge of Dry Creek's marshal, the other the black hat and narrow stare of a preacher. They rode slow, deliberate, dust rising behind them like a storm cloud. Elias met them at the gate, rifle cradled in his arms but not aimed. The girl stepped forward before anyone spoke. "No shoes. No fear. I'm not a witch," she said quietly. "I speak to horses. I know herbs. I heal what I can." The preacher looked at her with narrowed eyes. "That mark. It's mine," she cut in. "Not yours to understand." The marshal studied her, then looked to Elias. "She broken any laws?" "No." He nodded once. "Then we got no reason to stay." The preacher grumbled but followed. Their horses disappeared into the horizon, their purpose unfinished. Elias turned to her, mouth half open with disbelief, but she only smiled. That night they sat on the porch together. The tattoo glimmered faintly in the moonlight. He watched her hum her soft melody, the one that once pulled him back from the brink. "You saved me twice," he said. She looked at him, eyes soft as river stones. "No. You came back both times." He didn't reply. Just leaned closer, slow and sure, until their shoulders brushed. She didn't move away. He took her hand, not because he had to, not because she needed saving, but because some part of him had been reaching for that warmth for years. The canyon wind moved through the trees. The fire inside the cabin crackled. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called once, then fell silent. And there, beneath the endless sky, Elias Boone and the girl with the inked feather sat side by side, not broken, not whole, but becoming. Because grace doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it arrives in quiet steps, in the way someone watches you without fear, or the way they touch your arm when you expect them to flee. Sometimes grace looks like a girl the world discarded, who once saved your life and now sits beside you, asking for nothing but the space to be known.